Welcome back to Shrewsbury Film Society. This week's choice is a German film from 1974, Fear Eats the Soul, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Fassbinder was born in Bad Wölfershofen, a small town about 30 miles outside Munich, in either 1945 or 1946, depending on which source you check, and died aged 36 or 37 in Munich itself in June 1982 due to an overdose of barbiturates and cocaine. Different sources vary about his birth year, with one explanation being that his mother wanted to claim that he was born after the end of the Third Reich, so that he would be a fully post-war baby. Hence, she suggested to him that he say he were born in 46 rather than 45. I don't know the truth of this. Anyway, by the time of his death, he had become one of the most remarkable film directors of all time. In only 20 years, or just under, he'd managed to fit in directing more than 40 full-length feature films, 2 very substantial TV series, including the 13-hour-long historical drama Berlin Alexanderplatz, the soap opera series 8 Hours Are Not a Day, and the science fiction miniseries World on a Wire, and one could go on with a long list of his other activities, including producing or directing more than 20 plays. It really is extraordinary when you think about it that the box sets here with 8 and 9 films in them comprise less than half his total output in about that many years. Add on to that 8 Hours Are Not a Day, which was originally going to be 8 feature-length sequences for television. It ended up as merely 5. The World on a Wire, the other mini-series, and there's so much more that I haven't got to show. Fassbinder, therefore, was a phenomenon in every sense of the word. Extraordinarily, almost unbelievably prolific. He sometimes made 5 feature films in a single year. He was also remarkably innovative in combining his love of US melodrama and the French avant-garde styles of filmmaking to create a world all of his own. There's no one else really who's managed to marry together the melodramatic style of someone like Douglas Sirk with the avant-garde style of Jean-Luc Godard. His personal life, too, was a whirl, with him having numerous longer and shorter affairs with many of his male and female actors, including the co-star of Fear Eats the Soul, El Hadi Ben Salem, a very troubled Moroccan man who had left behind a wife and 5 children to come to Germany to start his film career. Salem had a short, tumultuous relationship with Fassbinder, which ended mainly due to Salem's violence and drinking, it seems. Not long afterwards, Salem stabbed several other people and fled to France, where he was eventually arrested and imprisoned. He hanged himself while he was in prison there in 1977. You'll see quite a striking contrast between this reality and the character he plays in the film. The film, in fact, Fear Eats the Soul, was shot in just a fortnight in September 1973 and loosely based on the Hollywood film All That Heaven Allows, which came out in 1955 and was directed by Douglas Sirk, and is the story of an older woman and her much younger gardener falling in love, contravening all the local social mores. Fear Eats the Soul is arguably one of Fassbinder's strongest films, and it was the first one that really brought him to international attention, because it won both the Critics' Prize and the Jury Prize at Cannes in 1974. The German title of the film, Angst essen Seele auf, is actually rather ungrammatical, echoing Salem's use of German as his second language. The film also stars Brigitte Mira as Emmy, who was aged 63 when it was shot, and she plays the older lonely woman looking for love. I don't think she was ever a big star, but she does seem to have worked pretty steadily from the 1940s through to the 1980s, and she did appear in many other films by Fassbinder, and also played a small role in Werner Herzog's great film The Enigma of Caspar Hauser. This film deals with many of Fassbinder's central preoccupations: a generalized dislike of the German society of the 1970s, that was at odds with the widely shared admiration of the Wirtschaftswunder, or economic miracle, of the post-war years. It's also about loneliness, exploitation, racism, and social taboos. The film is remarkable, in fact, for dealing with three taboos at once. Emmy is about twice the age of Ali. She's a German entering a relationship with a Gastarbeiter, or guest worker, many of whom were shunned by Germans in the 1970s. And of course they are of different colours. The reactions of those around them are sometimes perhaps somewhat caricatured, but they certainly seem to reflect the level of animosity that would have been directed at any such couple at the time. And yet, in spite of all the hatred they receive, it is hard to think of a more touching, truly affectionate, and generally moving couple on screen. The indignation and incredulity of the outside world is perhaps amplified by this lack of artifice between Emmy and Ali. They are not trying to make a point or to provoke a reaction. They simply want to be together. The film's ending is perhaps a touch sentimental, but I think a lot of critics have commented that it also seems to be appropriately realistic. So, see what you make of it and then join us to discuss it on Zoom. You might also like to investigate some of Fassbinder's other films. The Marriage of Maria Brown was his other big international hit that we also showed at the Hive a few years ago, and another of my favourites is Chinese Roulette. Thanks for listening.